Africa is a land of immense promise. From the shores of the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean, from the Sahara to the Cape, our continent is alive with resources, talent, and energy. But there is an enemy that really makes the news. Please, let's watch this video clip to prepare our minds for what's to come in this episode.
I'm a businessman in Nigeria. I'm in the electricity business. I own power plants. I generate presently about 15% of the electricity need for Nigeria. I have Chinese engineering companies that work for me. I'm building, almost completed by January, by the grace of God, my new power plant that will be the biggest thermal plant in Nigeria. It's a 1,250 megawatts power plant, will become operational in January. But during the course of the design and getting all the permits, we ran into difficult government officials. For environmental reasons, our permit was denied. The particular government official that I held a meeting with told me to my face that your project will never see the light of day. But while he was saying that, I was saying in my mind that this guy is talking as if he's God. And because we are not God, I couldn't say it out, but I was saying it in my mind that God, listen to him. Because he's not God, whatever he's saying is null and void. I'm not going to be worried about it. So I left, disappointed, of course, and I told my Chinese friend that, look, unfortunately, we have these difficulties, and it seems that it's going to be a while before we can get this going again. Meanwhile, it's a 1,250 megawatts power plant. Price tag is about $2 billion US. So it's not small money. So in the process, a lot of money has already gone into design and the preliminaries before we got to the stage where we must have the environmental permit before we can break ground. So my Chinese friend said, what are we going to do now? This is very serious, because the Afro-Exim Bank of China was involved. And that might have meant bankruptcy for him, for his company, because they have invested so much with me in this. So I told him not to worry, that everything's going to be all right. And he said that he's worried. Do you know somebody that can take you to the president or to speak to someone? I said, don't worry about it. That everything was going to be okay. And he said, are you sure? I said, no, I'm not going to do this on this. I'm coming to see you. It seems that you found a solution, so I'm coming to see you. So while on his way, I got on my knees and I prayed about it. And I asked God to make all things well. And so when my friend came to me face to face, said that, yes, Mr. Chairman, he called me Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, so what is the solution about this? It seems you are not worried. I said, I'm not worried because I've prayed about it. And God is going to make it right. My friend became very upset with me. He said, God cannot do this. This is not about God now. This is not about your church. Please, Mr. Chairman, put this aside. We are talking serious issues now. And I said, that is the only way I know to go about it. On the Sabbath, So it was like on Thursday, Friday I prayed about it. On Sabbath, I prayed as I always do and presented this issue before God Almighty. And I challenged God and I said, God, see, my friend said you cannot do this. So please show up. Not only to convince my Chinese friend, but also the government official that is trying to block us. Let him know that you are God Almighty and there's none like you. So I continued to pray about it. The following week, on a Wednesday, I got a call from the Ministry of Power that I should come to the minister's office. So I went and I was handed over my permit.
An enemy that does not fire bullets, yet claims millions of dreams. An enemy that does not destroy cities, yet slow nations. This enemy is the forest of protocol, an unseen forest that traps progress in its tangled roots. It doesn't roar, it doesn't burn, it simply waits. And slowly, quietly, it consumes time, the most precious currency of all. Picture this forest: no trees, no birds, no rivers. Instead, it is made of files stacked higher than your head, stamps that wait on desks, offices with closed doors, always where hope dies. It's a forest where every path leads to more waiting, where every turn requires another signature, another fee, another delay. For decades, Africa's challenges have been explained in terms of poverty, corruption, or bad leadership. But dig deeper, and you find that bureaucracy, rigid, excessive, and outdated, is the silent killer of African ambition. This forest does not make noise, it does not spread panic, it moves quietly, it eats hours, days, and years. And by the time you realize you are lost in it, your opportunity is gone. This is Africa's silent enemy. This is how Africa's dreams die, not in explosions or collapses, but in silence, in line, at the counter, beneath a pile of forms. Across the continent, millions of bright ideas vanish before they begin, because behind every delay, there is a lost opportunity. Behind every comeback tomorrow, there is a job that will never exist. And behind every locked office door, there is a future waiting to be signed. Africa's story is not one of incapacity, it is one of obstruction. Obstruction of systems built for a time long gone, but still governing a continent that moves faster than its paperwork. This forest, this bureaucracy doesn't make headlines. There's no breaking news banner for another license delayed or shipment held at ports. But its impact is enormous. It slows down nations, drains investments, and frustrates the very citizens who could transform their economies. The tragedy is that it is invisible. You cannot photograph inefficiency. You can't film lost time. You can't broadcast the sound of a missing signature. But its weight is felt everywhere: in the sluggish pace of development, the empty factories, the dreams deferred. The forest of protocol does not fire bullets, but it kills momentum. It does not destroy cities, but it weakens nations. And the worst part of it, most people have learned to live with it. They shrug, they wait, they whisper. That's just how it is. But that quiet acceptance is the enemy's greatest ally. Africa's silent enemy is not a person, not a group, not even a policy. It is a mindset, a belief that efficiency is a luxury, not a right. That reform is difficult, not urgent. Yet, for Africa to rise, truly rise, the forest must fall. Because time lost is growth lost. And in the global race for innovation, time is everything. This is the forest of protocol, Africa's invisible crisis, and its greatest opportunity for transformation.
Strength of Africa TV presents
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are at this moment. I'm your host, Adebayo Oladokun, and this is Strength of Africa TV, where truth meets courage, where the past is reawakened and the future of the motherland is reclaimed. Today's episode is titled The Forest of Protocol, Africa's Silent Enemy. Let's start with the cause of delay. If you want to measure progress, don't count skyscrapers or highways. Count how long it takes to get something done. Because behind every slow process is a slow economy. Let us speak with numbers. Because numbers tell stories too. To register a business in sub-Saharan Africa takes an average of 44 days. In New Zealand, it takes 3 days. In Singapore, clearing a shipping container takes less than 24 hours. In many African ports, it takes 20 to 30 days. While goods wait, profits die. That gap, those missing weeks, are not just numbers on a chart. They are weeks of rent paid for idle offices, weeks of salaries paid to teams waiting to start work, weeks of interest piling up on loans that can't yet generate revenue. In other words, bureaucracy doesn't just waste time, it kills money. At Africa's ports, where trade meets paperwork, the situation is even worse. It takes 20 to 30 days. That's an entire month of goods sitting idle. For exporters, it means missed deadlines. For importers, it means higher costs passed down to consumers. And for the economy, it means stagnation at the very gates of commerce. African farmers lose $48 billion every year in post-harvest losses. Not because they cannot grow food, not because they cannot move it fast enough. Bureaucracy at borders, bad roads, and slow permits mean produce rots while people go hungry. So, while some farmers lose income, others go hungry. In a continent that still battles food insecurity, this is not just inefficiency, it is a tragedy, and yet it is preventable. Consider this: Africa needs millions of jobs every year to keep up with its youth population. Yet, bureaucracy is a job killer. Each day of delay is a day of income lost. Each month of paperwork is a month of talent wasted. Now, look at the job market. Africa's youth population grows by 10 to 12 million people per year. To keep up, the continent needs to create at least 12 million new jobs annually. But how can businesses hire if they can't even start? Every day of delay in registering a company is a day of lost income. Every week of waiting for approval is a week of wages that never get paid. Multiply that by tens of thousands of entrepreneurs, and you begin to see the scale of the damage. According to the African Development Bank, small and medium enterprises account for over 80% of jobs in Africa. Yet, these are the same businesses most hurt by slow government systems. Many operate informally, not because they want to, but because formalization is a maze. A recent study found that in Nigeria, nearly 65% of small businesses operate outside official registration, not because they are hiding, but because the cost, time, and complexity of getting licensed simply aren't worth it. That means lost tax revenue for the state, lost protection for workers, and lost legitimacy for innovators. The economic cost of this invisibility is staggering. A 2023 United Nations Conference on Trade and Development (UNCTAD) report estimated that Africa loses around $250 billion a year to inefficiency, red tape, and lost productivity. That is more than the combined annual GDPs of Rwanda, Senegal, and Botswana, totally gone. Not because of conflict or natural disaster, but because of waiting, and the human cost even worse. Behind the numbers are real people. A farmer whose produce rots at the border, a startup founder whose funding expires before approval arrives, a factory owner who can't import spare parts in time to keep machines running. Every delay chips away at trust. Investors see it, they feel it, and many simply walk away. The World Economic Forum has consistently ranked inefficient government bureaucracy among the top 3 barriers to doing business in Africa. And when investors hesitate, so does development. Because capital is a coward. It flows where it is treated best, not where it's forced to wait. In 2022, foreign direct investment into Africa was 2.5% of global FDI, foreign direct investment. That means out of every $100 invested worldwide, Africa attracted less than $3. Not for lack of opportunity, but for lack of speed. Every major African city is filled with talent and ambition. But when talent meets delay, frustration grows, and sometimes people leave. That's one reason Africa loses so many of its brightest minds to the diaspora. The tragedy of bureaucracy is not just in what it delays, but in what it discourages. It tells people, wait your turn. It whispers, you are not important enough. And eventually they believe it. But the cost of that belief, the normalization of inefficiency, is beyond calculation. Because when a nation loses faith in its own systems, it loses the will to innovate. Africa cannot afford that. Not now. Not when the world is accelerating. While others build digital states and cashless economies, Africa still asks for photocopies and signatures in triplicates. It's not that Africa lacks the ability, it's that Africa's systems are running on the wrong time zone, one that measures progress in stamps, not in seconds. The forest of protocol is not just a metaphor, it's an economy wide reality that costs billions, delays millions, and defines the daily experience of a billion people. Until Africa confronts the cost of delay, honestly, publicly, and urgently, every development dream will remain just that, a dream. My family, let's look into the real stories and the real pain. Statistics expose the scale of the problem because numbers don't cry, Numbers don't feel frustration, people do. Behind every delay, there is a person, someone with a dream, a deadline, or a family waiting for them to succeed. To understand how deep this problem runs, we must listen to the stories hidden behind the data. In Nigeria, a group of entrepreneurs developed a solar energy project. It promised to light up thousands of homes. They had investors, they had the technology, they had the passion, but they waited 14 months for licenses to be approved. By the time the final stamp came, their investors were gone. The project collapsed. It wasn't corruption that killed their dream, it was delay. In Kenya, a woman entrepreneur wanted to export macadamia nuts. She faced endless permits, inspections, and fees. 3 years passed before she got the green light. By then, foreign companies dominated the market. Her business survived, but it never reached its potential. When she talks about it now, she doesn't sound angry. She sounds tired. Tired of come tomorrow. Tired of promises of reform that never reach the ground. Every year, African startups lose investors because of slow regulatory processes. A fintech startup in Cameroon once waited more than 18 months for approval to operate. Not because their business was illegal, but because no one knew which department had final authority. By the time the confusion cleared, the founders had left the country to rebuild their idea elsewhere. These stories don't make headlines. They don't appear in annual reports, but they represent thousands of untold tragedies. The quiet collapse of possibility. Imagine the millions of stories we never hear. A student with an idea for a startup who gives up after 6 months of waiting. A farmer who can't get seeds on time. A patient who dies because medical equipment was held up in customs. The forest of protocol does not just waste paper, it wastes lives. Economists call it transaction friction. Citizens call it the system. But for millions, it's simply exhaustion. The emotional cost of navigating institutions that do not trust their own people. And when trust is gone, people look for shortcuts. That's how corruption grows. Not always from greed, but from desperation. When the system punishes patience and rewards shortcuts, people learn to adapt in the only way they can. So the forest doesn't just waste paper, it teaches a dangerous lesson that waiting is for the powerless. So when we talk about the forest of protocol, we are not talking about some abstract policy flaw. We are talking about the daily suffocation of talent. We are talking about young people with ideas worth millions, trapped behind desks that haven't moved in decades. We are talking about lost potential, invisible but measurable in every unbuilt company, every idle pot, every wasted year. The forest is not made of evil people, it's made of habits, habits that resist change. And those habits cost Africa more than any war, more than any drought, more than any external debt. This is not an exaggeration, it's evidence written in the stories of real Africans who tried, waited, and gave up. But if we can see the human cost clearly, we can also see the solution clearly. Because every broken process can be fixed, and every system built by humans can be rebuilt by humans. But my fellow Africans, what are the roots of the forest? How did we end up here? Why is Africa choked by its own system? To understand the forest of protocol, we have to ask, how did it grow this thick, this fast, and this deep? Because no one sets out to build inefficiency. It happens layer by layer, form by form, rule by rule, until one day The system that was meant to serve the people starts serving itself. The first root lies in history. Much of Africa's administrative structure was inherited from colonial governments. Those colonial governments did not exist to empower Africans. They existed to control them. The bureaucracy they built was designed to manage obedience, not opportunity. First, in the colonial era, every movement, from trading to travel, required permission. You need a license to sell, a pass to move, and approval to build. The more control the administration had, the easier it was to govern populations without giving them power. When independence came, many countries replaced the flag but kept the file. The architecture of control stayed intact, and instead of dismantling the old systems, new governments added new layers: commissions, departments, agencies, each one built on top of the last. The result was not modernization, but multiplication. Where one approval once surfaced, now 10 were required. Decades later, Africa found itself stuck with systems that were never designed for speed, only for supervision, layers upon layers of approval. What should take one signature takes 10. Every layer adds time, and time adds cost. Second, the culture of gatekeeping. Too often, officials see their role as controllers, not servants. They hold back approvals to show power. The longer the line outside the office, the greater their influence. This mindset breeds stagnation because when power depends on control, efficiency becomes a threat. A faster process means less dependence. Less dependence means less leverage. So, the system protects itself, not out of malice, but out of habit. Third, complexity breeds corruption. When rules are unclear, people pay to jump the line. When permits take months, bribes become shortcuts. The forest is not just slow, it is rotting at its roots. An investor once described doing business in West Africa as navigating a maze where every wrong turn sends you back to the beginning. That maze is man-made, and it grows because no one is cutting it back. Then, there's the legacy of mistrust. Many systems in Africa operate on the assumption that citizens are trying to cheat, that everyone is suspect until proven otherwise. That's why simple tasks like opening a business, clearing a container, or transferring property requires endless verification steps. But mistrust comes at a price. It creates an environment where honesty is punished with the same delays as dishonesty. Eventually, citizens learn that there's no advantage in following the rules, so they stop trying. That mistrust also kills innovation because creativity requires flexibility, the freedom to try, fail, and try again. Bureaucracy suffocates that freedom by demanding permission at every turn. Another root lies in fragmented governance. In many African countries, digital transformation has been attempted but not coordinated. One ministry launches an e-service, another creates its own platform. A third demands physical documents just in case. Systems don't talk to each other. Databases don't connect. So the citizen still ends up printing everything for an office that already has the information somewhere else. This fragmentation wastes time and money. According to the African Union's Digital Transformation Strategy, nearly 70% of e-governance projects on the continent fail due to lack of integration and consistency. It is not the technology that fails, it is the coordination. And as Professor PLO Lumumba once said, Africa is a forest of protocol and a sea of agenda. His words capture the truth. We are drowning in the meetings, policies, and procedures while the world moves ahead. We have enough committees to fill an ocean, enough files to build a forest, but not enough action to change reality. My fellow Africans, what about the human face of hope? Let us also see the other side. Africans are resilient. Africans are creative. Africans are determined. Every day, people try to break through this forest. For every tree in the forest of protocol, there's someone trying to cut a path through it. And that's the story often left untold. Because while inefficiency is widespread, so is resilience. Every day across Africa, people find ways to move forward despite their barriers. They build, they adapt, they refuse to wait. Imagine a young woman with a brilliant app to connect farmers to markets. She stays up all night coding. She meets investors who believe in her. She launches a pilot project that works, but then she needs a business license. She needs a tax number. She needs approval from multiple ministries. She waits. Months turn into years. Her savings disappear. Her dreams withers. How many dreams die quietly like this, buried under stacks of paper? But she didn't stop. She turned her project into a cooperative. She worked directly with farmers, bypassing red tape that will have strangled a startup in its infancy. 3 years later, her app has connected over 10,000 farmers to buyers across 3 states. She calls her work a process of progress because every time she succeeds, she proves that change is possible even in a broken system. More Africans are beginning to question inefficiency. They are refusing to accept that waiting is inevitable. Social media now amplifies what used to be whispered complaints. When a government office delays, citizens go online, tagging officials, sharing evidence, and demanding accountability. What once died in silence now lives in public. And that exposure creates pressure because in the digital age, no system can hide behind paperwork forever. We must remember, behind every piece of paper is a person. Behind every file is a family. Behind every stamp is a future waiting to happen. The forest is real. The obstacles are real. But so is the determination to clear it. Every reform begins with one citizen who says enough. Every efficient system starts as an idea, often from someone who refuses to keep waiting in line. Africa's hope doesn't come from denying its challenges. It comes from confronting them and working around them until they fall. The question now is, if individuals can adapt, why can't systems evolve with them? Now, my family, we all need to cut paths through the forest. Every forest, no matter how dense, has a path. And across Africa, a few nations are proving that bureaucracy is not a permanent condition, it is a choice. A system built by people can be rebuilt by people. Change is happening, slowly but undeniably. The good news is this: forests can be cleared, paths can be made, and some countries have shown us the way. Rwanda introduced online business registration. Today, a business can be registered there in just 6 hours. Mauritius created a one-stop shop for business and trade. As a result, it has become one of the easiest places to do business in Africa. Ghana introduced a paperless port system. Clearance that once took 2 weeks now takes 48 hours. Estonia, though outside Africa, offers a lesson. Every citizen has a digital ID. Nearly all services are online. taxes, healthcare, even voting. Africa can leapfrog straight into this kind of system. So, what do these success stories teach us? That efficiency is not a miracle, it is management. That technology alone doesn't fix systems, leadership does. And that transparency is the enemy of red tape. Africa doesn't need to start from the scratch. It already has models that work, local, proven, and scalable. The challenge now is to replicate success with discipline, not just declaration. Because in governance, speed is not about haste, it's about respect. Respect for the citizens' time, respect for the investors' confidence, respect for the nation's potential. The more Africa treats time as wealth, the faster it will create real wealth. And if the forest was built one policy at a time, it can be cleared one reform at a time. The progress is real, the evidence is clear, but it's not yet enough. Because for every country that has cleared its path, 10 more are still lost in the maze. And unless action spreads, the few clearing will not save the whole forest. The solutions are known. They require technology, political will, and accountability. So, my people, every documentary reaches a moment of truth, a point where the facts stop being just facts and become a demand. For Africa, that moment is now. The forest of protocol has been mapped, measured, and named. We know what it costs, we know what it kills, and we know what can cut it down. The only question left is who will act. To government, cut the forest, clear the path. Do not treat efficiency as luxury. It is a lifeline. Every delay costs a job. Every obstacle kills an investment. Every piece of paper is a test of your commitment to the people you serve. Leadership must set the tone because reform is not about technology, it's about political will. When leaders prioritize service delivery, systems follow. When they don't, excuses multiply. Africa's governments must decide, do they want to be remembered for announcements or for outcomes? To civil servants, public service is not ownership, it's stewardship. Every file on your desk is someone's future. Every signature you delay could mean a student loses a scholarship, a family loses a house, or an entrepreneur loses an investor. Efficiency is not just about systems, it's about empathy. The day a public servant starts seeing people instead of paperwork is the day bureaucracy begins to die. Civil servants are not enemies of progress, they are its front line, and they must be trained, equipped, and motivated to see themselves that way. Modern governance is customer service. If private companies can deliver in minutes, public offices should not take months. Accountability must become personal. Every office should measure performance not just in actions taken, but in time saved. Because in the 21st century, speed is dignity. To every African citizens, demand better. Do not normalize inefficiency. Do not accept that this is how it has always been. Pressure your leaders. Shine light on the delays. Hold them accountable. Governments count on citizens forgetting. Remind them. In democracy, silence is permission. Noise is progress. When you demand faster, cleaner systems, you are not asking for privilege. You are asking for respect. The respect of a citizen whose time and dreams matter. To entrepreneurs, keep pushing. Yes, the forest is thick. Yes, the path is hard, but do not give up. Use technology, use innovation, build networks that help you survive until the system changes. Technology is your weapon, collaboration is your shield, transparency is your strength. Build systems that bypass red tape without breaking laws. Build apps that make processes visible. Build networks that help each other survive until the system changes. Africa's greatest startups will not only make profit, they will make reform unavoidable. Because when innovation moves faster than bureaucracy, change has no choice but to catch up. The Forester Protocol has grown for decades because no one treated time as a national asset. But now, Africa's youth are teaching a new lesson that time is power, and whoever controls the use of time controls the pace of progress. Reform is not optional anymore. In a global economy moving at a digital speed, delay is defeat. Africa can no longer afford to lose another generation to lines, forms, and waiting rooms. The time to cut the forest is not tomorrow, it is now. Let's remind ourselves that Africa is not poor. Africa is rich. Rich in people, rich in resources, rich in ideas. But Africa is trapped, not by lack of money, not by lack of brains, but by a forest that produces nothing but waiting and waste. Yet, forests can fall, paths can open, light can break through. The day Africa cuts down the forest of protocol is the day Africa will not just walk into the future, it will run. It will run with the speed of its youth, the energy of its entrepreneurs, the power of its resources, and the vision of its leaders. The forest of protocol has stood for too long, silent, heavy, and unquestioned. It doesn't riot, it doesn't march, it doesn't shout, it just waits. And while it waits, it consumes. It consumes ambition, it consumes time, and in the end, it consumes hope. The forest of protocol is Africa's silent enemy. The time to cut it down is now. Because time, not oil, not gold, not land. Time is the true wealth of nations, and Africa's time has come. I'm your host, Adebayo Oladokun, and this is Strength of Africa TV. If you found value in this conversation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Deezer. Watch out for the next episode. You don't want to miss it. Until then, tell your own story. Because Africa's future is written in an African ink. Stay rooted, stay bold, stay African. Thank you for watching and see you in the next episode. Bye.